The river was a ribbon of steel-gray water, churning under the weight of the spring thaw. On the western bank, the American G's sat in their jeeps, smoking their last rations of Lucky Strikes. On the eastern bank, the silhouettes of Soviet T-34s emerged from the smoke of the burning horizon. For Jack, a sergeant from Virginia, the silence was the strangest part. For 3 years, his life had been a symphony of artillery and the staccato rhythm of the M1 Garand. Now, the guns were quiet. The war was literally running out of room. "Look," a private whispered, pointing a trembling finger toward the middle of the bridge. The bridge at Torgau had been blown in the center, leaving a jagged gap of twisted metal and shattered timber. But crawling across the girders, suspended over the rushing water, was a man in a brownish khaki uniform. He wore a circular cap with a red star. Jack didn't reach for his rifle. He reached for his canteen. He climbed out of his jeep and began to walk toward the center of the bridge, his boots crunching on the debris. As they met at the edge of the gap, the two soldiers, one from the tobacco fields of the south, the other from the wheat fields of Siberia, stared at each other. The Russian soldier's face was a map of exhaustion, his eyes bloodshot from weeks of the relentless drive toward Berlin. There was no translator. There was no grand ceremony. The Russian soldier reached out his hand across the twisted iron. Jack gripped it. The handshake was firm, gritty with the dust of 2 different fronts that had finally collided. "Tovarish," the Russian said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "Partner," Jack replied, nodding. Around them, more men began to emerge from the shadows. Americans and Soviets began to shout to one another across the water, tossing packs of cigarettes and tins of chocolate. Someone produced an accordion, and the melancholy notes of a folk song drifted over the Elbe. They stood there for a long time, looking at the gap in the bridge. It was a physical representation of the world they were about to inherit, a world broken and divided, yet momentarily held together by the relief of survival. Jack looked back at his squad. They were laughing, trading stories with signs and gestures. For a few hours, the politics of the future didn't matter. The Iron Curtain hadn't fallen yet. There was only the sun on the water, the smell of the river, and the realization that the long, dark night of the 1940s was finally over. As the sun set, turning the Elbe into a river of gold, Jack realized that they weren't just 2 armies meeting. They were the survivors of a storm that had nearly extinguished the world. He let go of the Russian's hand, but they remained standing there, side by side, watching the light fade on the last day of the old world.